Okay, this next little bit is going to be about how to do images and sounds in processing. And we'll do much more with these later, starting with our MP3 player example at the end of this series of videos. This will just give you an introduction to what we can do and real briefly show you how we can do it. So in processing, images are held inside p-image objects. So notice that that's P-I are capitalized and the rest is lowercase. So this p-image object here contains the picture that we want to display in our program. There's several different file formats that we can use. GIFs, JPEGs, TGAs, or PNGs. Those are the file formats that we can use. All right. Now, when we're using images in processing, we generally make them what are called class variables rather than local variables. A class variable is one that's declared outside of any method, usually at the top of the program. Okay, so it's not created inside setup or draw or mouse clicked or any place else, but rather at the top of the program after the import statements. A class variable is one that can be seen everywhere in the program, and you'll see why that's important in a little bit. So anything that's declared outside of any method can be seen everywhere. On the other hand, things that are declared inside methods are called local variables, and those can only be seen inside their method. Okay, so let me give you an example. Here's a syntax template that kind of shows a very simple image drawing program. First, we declare the image up at the top, pimage img. That makes this a class variable. Then in setup, we load an image using the load image method and the file name that we're going to load. That method creates the pimage object and returns it, storing it in this img reference. And then since this is a class variable, it can be seen not only in setup but also in draw, and in this particular case we show the image with the image method call. Okay? Now, before we do that, they have to be added to the processing program. So your processing sketch needs to know where those pictures are that it's going to display. And we do this one way by dragging the image from the file system onto the processing development environment. So once you have your program up and running, you click and drag the images that you want to include onto the editor, and those will be added to your sketch. Okay, now it's important to know that when you're doing this, you have to know the exact file name for the image, including the extension. And that can be a problem if you're running Windows and it defaults to hide the extensions of known file types. So in that situation, you may not even see what the extension of the file is. So Windows users, you may want to investigate how to turn off that particular feature so that you're able to see the extension, because you need to know it when you are writing programs that use images. Okay? Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at a quick little example, and then we'll come back and discuss sounds. Alright, in this little example here, I've created just a sketch, so it's blank at this point, and outside of it you notice that I've got on my desktop a little picture of a hedgehog. So what I'll do is write a program that displays that image in the display window. Okay? I'm going to start by dragging that picture onto my IDE, my processing development environment. When I do that, I should see one file added to the sketch. That means that processing now knows where that hedgehog picture is. Okay? Let me also show you real quick. If I save this, and I'll just save it to the desktop, and drag the folder where I saved it over here so it's on the video. If I open that up, you'll see that inside the Hedgehog folder, hedgehog.pde, that's the program that I'm writing. And then in the data folder, that's where that image is. Okay, so that's actually what happens is when you drag a picture onto your programming development environment, your processing development environment, it creates the data folder, puts the item in there. Okay? All right, now this will look quite a bit like what was in the slides that we just went through. We're just going to go ahead and load that image using the load image method. And remember that we have to know the file name exactly. If we don't type the file name in exactly, it won't work. Okay? All right. And we also better size the window. Okay, let's see what happens. Oh, and I spelled it wrong. I have one too many capital letters. There we go. P-I are uppercase, the rest is lowercase. All right, and there is our image of our hedgehog displayed in the display window. Okay, so that's how that works. There's a second way that you can do this. The image method call here in Draw makes it, I can display that image anywhere, so I could move that around potentially if I wanted to. But if the image that I have happens to be exactly the same size as the window, I can also use the background method call with an image. And now that hedgehog is the background, and anything that I draw will be drawn on top of it. Okay? So that's a real brief introduction to how to use, how to make that image business work in processing. Okay, let's talk about sounds. Okay, moving on to sounds. It's a similar situation. Just like images are held in p-image objects, sounds in processing are held in audio player objects. The only slight difference is that we have to use a minim object to create the audio player object that holds the sound. So with images, there is just one call to load image. When we're doing sounds, we have to get a minim object first and then use it to load the sound file that we want. In terms of formats, popular formats are supported like MP3, WAV, AIFF, AU, and SND. Sometimes when you're trying to load an MP3 and play it, it works. Usually it does, but sometimes it doesn't. In that situation, best advice is maybe try a different file, or perhaps use a sound editor to open it up and save it under a different format, and often that will clear up things. Basically, don't give up on the first one if it doesn't work. Syntax-wise, here's a template for using sounds in processing. In this case, we're going to have two class variables, the minim object and the audio player object. And in setup, we'll first create the minim object with a call like this, where we're using the new keyword and the minim constructor. This is the parameter, and for right now, just consider that to be a magic word that has to be there. And the result of that is a new minim object, which we referred to via the loader reference. Then we use that object, its load file method, to load in the song or the sound that we want, and we'll store that in an audio player object. Okay? And then somewhere else, we'll play the sound with the .play method call. Now essentially, an audio player is like a one-song MP3 player. It can play, rewind, pause, fast forward, all those types of things. So it's pretty versatile. Now in our next example, the next chapter example, we'll actually expand that concept of a one-song MP3 player, add a little bit of graphics to it, and see if we can come away with an interactive program that plays some music when we click on it. So that's what the next video will cover.